Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush setting the bar high when speaking about job creation and his goal to double the current U.S. growth rate during last week's debates.
A 4% growth strategy means you fix a convoluted tax code. You get in and you change every aspect of regulations that are job killers. You get rid of Obamacare and replace it with something that doesn't suppress wages and kill jobs. You embrace the energy revolution in our country. This president and Hillary Clinton, who can't even say she's for the XL pipeline even after she's left, give me a break.
Joining us right now to talk about where the jobs are, former Apple CEO John Sculley and former Deputy Assistant Treasury Secretary and Encima Global Founder and President David Malpass. Good to see you both. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen. First to you, David. What do you think about Jeb Bush's 4% growth expectation? Is that even doable?
Hi, Maria. Yeah, I think it's certainly doable. In fact, in most business cycles, you do get to 4% growth. So it's not a big stretch at all. That's basically a statement on how slow growth has been in this recovery cycle. So if you have tax simplification, that's going to help a lot. That's, Donald Trump is now on that line. So that's great. Get the Republicans talking on the same line of tax simplification. That adds materially to growth. I think it's ironic that Obama's policies have basically taken from the middle class and given it to the top 1%. We have this giant sucking sound around the economy because of the 0% interest rate and the subsidy for bond issuers. You've got big companies and the government, big bond issuers, being subsidized by what the Fed is doing, right. And that's held down the median income. So this is certainly doable, and the details, one thing I like about what Bush is doing is just sticking to message, that there's a clarity in talking about growth and strength abroad.
And then, John Sculley, you're all about growth, the way you invest and where you're finding investment ideas. You were the CEO of Apple. Where are the jobs and the growth stories today in this new modern economy?
Well, I think we're seeing technology is enabling an entirely new character of what a job is. For example, independent contractors who really work on a project basis are becoming a larger and larger part of the workforce. So we're seeing that contingent work will be maybe upwards of 30 to 40% of the workforce over the over the 2020s, and that's going to have a huge impact in terms of lifestyle, where people live, because they can live wherever they want and be able to work remotely using technology.
So you mentioned unicorns. Tell us about unicorns. What are you referring to, and why is that so important in terms of job creation?
Well, unicorns are a perfect example of new companies that are being backed by huge amounts of capital. They're quickly reaching multi-billion-dollar market values, and the reason is that they're going into giant industries that need efficiencies, that need to get the old ways of doing business. Now, Uber takes out the inefficiency of personal transportation. Airbnb takes out the inefficiencies of the hospitality industry. I'm involved in a unicorn now, which is in the consumer credit finance. It's called Empower Credit, and it's a true different way of bringing technology that simplifies how do you get your credit finance improved immediately. Yeah. And it's led by a brilliant inventor of technology that's really changing the game.
Top story in the Wall Street Journal yesterday was a story about healthcare and Uber for healthcare, where you basically, it's like medical professionals on demand. And it was the #1 read story yesterday.
Well, this is really the modern economy, the marriage of technology and healthcare, the marriage of technology and education. Do you think Jeb Bush understands the modern economy and knows where the new jobs of tomorrow? This is not like any other economy we've seen.
That's right. I think he does. I mean, we'll have to see in how you actually bring the government. I mean, one of the things you've been discussing here is these are not government-created jobs that we're talking about. The unicorn economy is, in a way, it's the freedom to actually expand. Right. And so Bush is all about that in Florida. I think some of the other Republican candidates also have done that, meaning that's a theme that's running through this deep bench that the Republicans have in the candidates.
David, every candidate seems to have talked about tax simplification over the decades now. It's a popular issue with the electorate, Democrat or Republican. You've heard it out of candidates. And yet we haven't seen it. Yes, it may stimulate the economy were it to happen, but Democrats worry about loopholes for companies. Republicans worry about simply the tax rate being too high. Is it feasible that we would actually see some resolution of this issue in the next administration, whereas the last several administrations have not been able to address it?
What do you think?
Taxes can be simplified. Reagan did it in the 80s. I was involved in the 86 Tax Act, and what it took at that time was a really clear vision from the president. And so you had to see the president be able to state a vision that we want a simpler code and then push it through. That means actually directly lobbying members.
You got all these technology companies with all this money overseas, John. Do you think they'll bring that money back if, in fact, we see a change in the tax code?
Well, I think this is one of the huge opportunities to get this 4% growth. We've got maybe $4 trillion sitting overseas, and if that money is brought back and negotiated to get some of it to go into infrastructure investment, I think you'll see a big change in terms of the uplift of growth in the economy. But just going back to healthcare, because you hit on a really important growth opportunity. Here's a $3 trillion industry that is unsustainable, but you bring in the unicorn opportunities for consumer virtual care. I'm involved with a company called MD Live. We're doing that, and it's a booming area of growth.
Yeah.
All of the people in the ecosystem of healthcare realize you've got to give consumers more of a role in their own
But here quickly, I will look like Kate Upton before we get tax reform in this country. That's my prediction.
I think it's doable. I think
David,
it's doable.
thank you so much, John. Always wonderful to have you on the program. Thanks so much, John Sculley, David Malpass. We'll be right back. Stay with us.